Hello, my name's Jane Barrett from the Career Farm, and I'm delighted to interview Keith Grinsted and find out a bit about him and his thoughts on various questions that I'm dying to ask him. So, Keith, welcome this evening.
Good evening.
Hi. Just checking you're there. Keith, would you just like to kind of introduce yourself very briefly and tell me how you got to be doing what you're doing now with setting up Go2Guy?
Right, yes, well, Keith Grinsted, my day job is I'm Member Relations Officer for Chelmsford Star Cooperative Society Limited, which is a bit of a mouthful. But outside of that work, I've sort of branded myself as the go-to guy for charities and set up a group on LinkedIn called Charity UK, which really came about back in 2008 when I was working in the charity sector. Had got wind of the fact that I was going to be made redundant, along with about another 30 people from the telephone fundraising company I was working for, and thought Charity UK sounds like a good name for a group on LinkedIn. So I set it up to reserve it, really. Completely forgot about it until I got made redundant, and then about 4 or 5 months later suddenly remembered it, went on, and suddenly found I had 100 members on there. So I thought, well, there's obviously some interest here. So decided to do some work on there, post some comments and, you know, a bit of content on there. And I guess it took about 12 months to get to 500 members on there. Then it suddenly accelerated to the degree that it's within about another 6 months we were up to 1,000 members. I checked it earlier this evening, and I've now got 11,962 members. It's the largest charity group on LinkedIn, and the membership goes up at the rate of about 130 new members a week.
Wow, that's very impressive.
It is, and I'm now actually some developments that you're not aware of, but I've been speaking to the Big Lottery Fund over the last couple of weeks with a view to establishing a hub, a website hub for charities and social enterprises, right. Where I will then be inviting the members of Charity UK to come along and join that, and we'll have the facility for podcasts, for guest bloggers and all sorts of things. So and sort of local networking events as well for the charity and social enterprise sector.
I feel you're starting a movement here, Keith.
Well, I think the movement actually sort of is pushing me to a degree. It's just phenomenal how because I've always felt there's within the charity and social enterprise sector there's not really any significant networking facility anywhere. So I've got a bit of a following now, and now I'm going to sort of take that forward and see if we can make it even bigger.
And just so I'm clear and our listeners are clear, is something you do part-time or a day a week, or and you're on your LinkedIn profile it says Braintree District Voluntary Support Agency. Is that your main role, or?
No. My day job is with Chelmsford Star Cooperative Society, and I'm member relations. So we're an independent cooperative. I look after the membership. Right. I run events for members, involved with charities, do a lot of work with schools. Right. Outside of that, I'm a trustee at Braintree District Voluntary Support Agency, Vice Chair of Governors at Colchester County High School for Girls, one of Prince's Trust mentor, various other bits and pieces. So what I'm doing here is sort of evenings, weekends, but it's also part of the day job because I can link it with what I'm doing as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this your branding Go2Guy. How did you come up with that?
It was a bit tongue-in-cheek to begin with. I've been involved with networking for many years, and I've done lots of things in the past. I've been everything from a milkman and a driving instructor through to MD of a Danish software company. And people at networking events, very, very good friends of mine over the years, have said, Keith, I've known you for years and I really don't know what you do. You do so many different things. And one of the things I love doing is connecting people. I love through networking, connecting people, putting them together and seeing what results. And about 3 years ago, when I started up my Launchpad scheme to help people that out of work being made redundant, there was an exercise that I'd get them to do, which I creatively swiped, as Tom Peters would put it, from an American coach, which is called My Story. And basically, it's who I am. So it's who I am as a person, where I come from, so what my background is, how I've got to where I am, what my achievements are, can be something very, very small, and where I want to go. And I realised from then that after 30 odd years in selling, that, which I loved and hated, the bits I loved were talking to people, and the bits I hated were having to sell to people. Yeah. And doing this exercise gave me the focus and made me realise that what I'd been missing all these years is that I'd actually hadn't got focus, hadn't got a niche. I'd been made redundant 5 times. I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I was carrying a lot of baggage with me. And thought, right, I've got to clear the decks. I've got this Charity UK. So I saw somebody else had put them, some American had put themselves down as the go-to guy for this, that and the other. I thought, yeah, that sounds good. We'll go for that. So I did. So that's where the go-to Charities came.
It's catchy, and you kind of, I like it. It's kind of quite positive, isn't it? You said you'd been made redundant 5 times. How did you manage to bounce back from that? Because for a lot of people, that it's a massive thing to happen, and it can floor a lot of people. What did you have a strategy, or would you would you give some advice to people who've been made redundant?
Yes, I mean, it's floored me on occasions. Yes, I've been made redundant 5 times. I've experienced. This is why I can advise other people, because yes, I've shut myself in the bedroom, hidden in the corner of the room, crying and not wanting anybody to come anywhere near me. I've had cognitive behavioural therapy at the doctors. I've been off work 8 weeks with work-related stress.
Gosh.
Got close to bankruptcy a couple of times, but you just bounce back. I mean, I have a very positive outlook on life. I get up every morning and the sun is shining, even if it's cloudy out there. I say to people, if you raise yourself high enough, the sun's shining. It frustrates my wife, and guess I sometimes get accused of having a bit of a head in the sand attitude, but I think with every situation, you've got to turn it around. There's an opportunity there somewhere around the corner.
But from what you've said, there have been times when you found that hard to do.
Oh yes. I've sat there with the Excel spreadsheet with 200 job applications on there that I'm tracking because there's nothing better to do. I've been totally frustrated, but you have to then dig deep and say, well, okay, I've hit rock bottom. There's nowhere else to go.
And what if someone was in that situation who in front of this spreadsheet with loads of jobs they'd applied for, are there any kind of general tips you would give somebody, if they've been made redundant?
Yes, well, I mean, certainly this day and age, I think the biggest advice is stop looking for a job and look for work. I think what most people, and what I do with Launchpad when I have one-to-one sessions with people, is
that something you still do now, Launchpad?
Oh, yes. And basically, we sit down. I sit down with people. We do mind maps, and I get them to look at different parts of their life, different parts of their career. But the one thing that I'm looking for is what they're passionate about.
Okay.
And the key thing there is to look for what, and I say to them, look, I want to find, and most people find this difficult to actually put their finger on. If you could do anything in the world, anything you possibly wanted to do, irrespective of any barriers, financial or anything like that, what do you really want to do? What are you passionate about? And sometimes it takes a couple of sessions to get through people what they really are passionate about, because they're frightened to admit it.
That's so interesting you say that, because there's a video on YouTube which I'll post out called it's Alan Watts, and it's "What Would You Do If Money Was No Object?" And then it's really a really lovely clip that just says exactly what, gives a kind of visual interpretation of what you've said. So that might be quite useful for people to watch. Yeah.
I tell you that I'll give it a scary story about this. That I was doing some mock and this worries me about young people. I was doing some mock interviews at a school last week, secondary school in Essex, and one of the young lads there, I was really having difficulty engaging with him and working out what he wants to do with his life. And all he kept going on about was he loved playing squash, but he wasn't in a squash club or anything like that. And I just couldn't understand why he was so keen on it, but wasn't involved in it sort of competitively.
Yeah.
So I said, look, just let's just explore. If you had all the money in the world, if you could do whatever you wanted to do, what would you do? And he said, what you mean? I'd have as much money as I wanted, and I could go out and spend as much money as I really wanted to. I said, yeah. What would you really do? I'd go out and buy a new squash racket. And I thought, oh, this guy really hasn't got a great deal of sort of get up and go. It's scary.
So, Keith, tell me, Launchpad, is that something that how often do you do that? Is that a company, or what is that?
It's something that after I'd been, I don't know, fourth redundancy or whatever, and got past a certain age and found that there was no support out there whatsoever for older people in terms of careers, and things kick in after 6 months. Well, after 6 months, you've lost your contacts. You've dropped out of things. So I actually originally through Twitter, and I'm a great believer in Twitter and social media. Through Twitter, I had contact with Darcy Wilson-Rymer, who was the UK MD of Starbucks at the time. Mm-hmm. And I was looking to run this, I called it the Java Job Club. And we were going to run it through Starbucks restaurants all around the country.
Brilliant.
But I couldn't get any funding for it. The Job Centre came up with £400 towards the marketing. But there was no way I could take it further. So when I joined Chelmsford Star 3.5 years ago, I thought, well, it's a social thing. It's putting back into the community. So I started it there, got it publicised on BBC Essex quite a few times. Used to run it as group sessions, so that I had 4 or 5 people dropping in together. But scrubbed those when I had a session where I had the job centre used to send people to me, and I had 2 sort of middle management guys there, and then this Polish HGV driver turned up who could barely speak English, and it sort of ruined the session for the other 2 guys. So I do it now by appointment on a one-to-one basis, don't charge anybody anything, and I work with people through Chelmsford Star. They fund me to do it. And basically I work with people of age range from 16 to 63 and help them to get their life back on track. A lot of them end up getting jobs. I get them on LinkedIn and get them connecting with people they used to work with, and a number of them have gone off and set up their own businesses as well.
I mean, that sounds a great scheme, and it sounds like you, just listening to you, that you keep mentioning social media, that you're obviously a big advocate of it, and you've managed to grow this incredible list. How have you grown that list? Because I can't believe it just happened by itself, or did it?
Well, I guess it's a combination of things, really. I mean, on Twitter, for example, I've got over 5,000 followers on Twitter.
Wow! And how have you done that? How have you managed to? Because I would imagine some of us listening who have businesses are thinking, I'd quite like 5,000, people listening to what I have to say if I've got a business. How did you manage to make that happen?
I think with all things, you've got to link things. It's no good doing one thing in isolation. So I used to be very, very active on another online network called Academy. Switched over more to LinkedIn when it had more functionality. Got into Twitter, and if you're posting good, if you're putting good content on there, if you are getting into discussions with other people, they're obviously then linking you in with their followers. But linking them together. So, for example, stuff that goes on to my Charity UK site, I tend to, even if it's stuff that's written by other people, I tend to retweet it, and that draws more people in. And it's just I think with Twitter, I noticed that once I got to 1,000 members, it suddenly skyrocketed from there. And so I think there are a lot of people that just look for people that got lots of followers and follow them. But it is really linking everything together, and you've got to have good quality content on there. It's no good just saying, I'm just about to have cheese on toast and this sort of thing. You've got to put the That's fine if you've got a group of friends that you're just communicating with, but if you really want to promote yourself from a business perspective or anything like that, you've got to build the credibility. Hence, the go-to guy for charities bit. I now have people coming to me in the charity sector who've been in the charity sector way longer than I have, but come to me for advice.
I think this would be a good place for me to share your LinkedIn profile. So I'm just going to share my desktop and just show everybody your LinkedIn profile.
This is clever. This is clever, isn't it?
Does that work?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, you're very active. You can see that you're very, very active in this. So really, in a nutshell, then, it's basically be active, share stuff that's interesting, connect people, and do all the things, that to grow your list, to grow your followers is being very active. And I presume you're very active in your group.
Yes. Fairly active, because I don't want to be sort of dominating it, because there's a lot of people on there with a lot of good things to say, and I dip in and out of conversations. I do a lot of moderating on there too. I mean, the biggest problem I have is recruitment companies spamming it and things like that. So I'm on there every day sorting, and people it's an open group that anybody can look at, but you have to be a member to actually join in the discussions. Right. And I've got members that say it's the only open group they belong to, because I do take care to get rid of all the spamming and all the adverts off there. But it's, I think with all of it, the one thing I don't do is I don't push myself. I don't promote. I don't try to sell to people. Yes, I've got things to sell, but I think the key thing is to be honest with people, to be straightforward. I've always believed in the paying it forward concept, where I'm happy to link people, don't expect anything from it, but I know at some point in the future, I'll get payback from it. Yeah.
And this sounds like it's going in the direction of either a charity or a business for you, really, from what you said earlier about...
It is now, yes, because... now that it's got to this sort of it's got to this level where it is a substantial group on there. It's growing all the time, and there's the sufficient volume there to actually turn it into something else where I can. But what I'd like to do is to start to turn it into offline as well, so that we have regional networking events and things like that. Because in the charity and social enterprise sector, there's just not the networking, and there are so many people out there that can do what I can do in terms of helping one another, and that's when I came up with the go-to guy branding, if you like, I also came up with my own personal sort of strapline guiding principle, which is here to make a positive difference. And I try to apply that in everything I do, in my day-to-day interactions, anything that I'm doing with other people. I want to make a positive difference to other people's lives, to my family's lives, and I know I'll benefit from it in the long term.
And that's great. Very inspiring, actually, Keith. I'm so glad we've managed to get you in to interview you. I was just scrolling through your LinkedIn profile, and you've got 2 books on there: the Secret that I can see, and the Snowball, Warren Buffett. Yeah. Is there anybody that you do you have a mentor? Do you have people that you particularly admire? I'm just going to stop sharing my desktop now, actually.
I don't have a mentor. I would love to have a mentor, and I have looked for people in the past to work with me. And but I guess if there's anybody that, and I was asked this the other day actually, Jack Canfield,
yes, Jack Canfield, yes,
writer of the Chicken Soup books. He's got a couple of books. One of them's the Success Principles, and there's a shorter version of it, which is from how to get from where you are to where you want to be. Yeah. And it's just a sort of a cut down version of Success Principles. And I just think it's fantastic. And he's very motivational. If you hear any of his webinars and things like that, very positive outlook on life. I do. I mean, you saw on there The Secret, and I know it's a contentious book, but I believe. I mean, I'm not so sure about the giving out the vibrations and things like that, but I do believe that if you adopt a positive attitude, you get a positive attitude in return. And one thing I'd ask, just an experiment. One thing I'd ask people to do, if somebody bumps into you at work or in the street and says, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Most people will turn around and say, "I'm fine, okay," but it comes across very negative because their voice is tailing off, and the response you're going to get is, "Oh, okay," and it's going to go nowhere. What I consciously did, around about the same time as I changed everything else, I decided when people ask me how I am, I'm going to say, "Good," or "Great," "Really good," with a sort of a bounce in my voice. Try it.
And did that make a big difference?
Tomorrow, try it, and I guarantee you'll get better interactions with people. They'll feel better, and you'll feel better.
Excellent. I shall. Even though it's raining in Yorkshire and pretty miserable, I shall be buoyant and smiley tomorrow. I promise.
The sun is shining up there somewhere.
In my head.
It always is. Yes.
And obviously you've been involved in lots of businesses. You mentioned the MD position you had for the Danish software company. You've been involved in the milk business as well as a milkman.
Yes,
so
yes,
is there any, for those of us listening who have their own businesses or are thinking of setting up a business, are there any kind of real top, some kind of key things that you've learned over your career that, you've kind of learnt by experience that you'd like to pass on?
I think it comes back to this. I think it comes back to this passion thing again, really, because it's no good doing something that you don't enjoy. And I've done it. Okay, you can do it for a while and learn lessons from it. But I think you've got to, particularly if you're setting up in business, you've got to be doing something that you enjoy doing. And it's got to be. I always think of actors. Actors who, when they're out of work, they're not out of work. They say they're resting, and they're passionate. If you hear an actor, they always go on about how lucky they are to be doing what they love doing. And it doesn't matter whether they're in repertory or on the West End or whatever. It doesn't matter how much money they're earning out of it. They love doing what they do. And they get the satisfaction out of it, and I think that's the key thing. Is no good beating around, looking for an opportunity. You've got to do what you're passionate about doing. And I guess the other thing is what most of the big entrepreneurs have found is if you're not good at doing something yourself, buy in the expertise. Get somebody that is good at it. You can't do everything. And if there's something that you haven't got the expertise in, then find somebody that does. Okay, I work for a cooperative. We cooperate with other cooperatives. I've advocated collaboration for years because working with somebody rather than competing against them it's going to make such a tremendous difference.
I think what you say is really true, and it's taken me a lot of time in business to work out that there's things that I am not good at, or I can do them, but it takes a lot of energy that's diverted from things that I'm better at. And I found that certainly certain things like bookkeeping I hate doing, and VAT, all those kind of things. And actually what you need to do is get somebody else to do it who eats that for breakfast, who is really good at it and likes doing it. And I think I see this with a lot of people when they're struggling to scale their business, is they get stuck in doing the stuff. They don't think they can afford to outsource it, but that frees them up to do more of the stuff they're better at. And especially if you're good at sales or account management, or which actually brings in the money, or actually doing the work, it gives you more time to do the work, then it's definitely a good investment. But it's a hard step change to make, I think, when you go from maybe kind of self-employed to kind of building more of a business.
It is difficult, but I mean, it's like I've sort of discovered that or realised that what I love doing, I love talking, I love speaking, and probably six months ago I decided that irrespective of everything else I want to do, two things that I'd love to do is I want to be able to write professionally, and I want to be able to do public speaking. And I've had a lot of opportunities anyway. But since I've changed my mindset, I've spoken at conferences, I've had video interviews, probably every week for about the last 8 weeks.
You have what you wish for.
Well, yeah, and I've also recently picked up some paid blogging work on an American technology website as well.
Fantastic. I saw that you had blogger on your LinkedIn profile. Blogger, professional speaker. You're really putting it out there that that's what you want to do, and
I have,
yes. It's working.
Yes.
Fantastic.
But you've got to believe in yourself, and it's got to be what you're passionate about, as I said earlier on.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, Keith, it's been fantastic speaking to you. I'm now going to, there's one thing just before I go to questions. I just wanted to flag up the Open University mentoring scheme. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am, yes.
Yeah, because that might be either for you to be a mentor or a mentee. For everybody listening this evening, that the Open University is setting up a mentoring program. So that's you said you love a mentor,
yeah,
or you certainly sound like you could give a lot to mentees as well. So I hope you will get involved in that program.
Well, yeah, it does. It looks a fantastic program, and I think it's something. Even if people don't actually think they need a mentor, there's so much that you can gain by just bouncing ideas off other people and having somebody, even if it's just to help keep your feet on the ground or give you the impetus to follow a dream. I think it's so important.
And asking those questions that with no real agenda, which is incredibly useful, isn't it, as well? That's
right.
Yeah. Have you had a mentor in the past?
Well, I guess I have really, sort of from time to time, people that sort of drift into your acquaintanceship and work with you for a period of time. But I think, if you think about it, your friends don't really want to tell you the truth. You probably don't want to talk to your family about some of the ideas that you've got. So really, you do need somebody independent that you can actually go to and say, look, I've got this idea. I think it's rubbish, but what do you think of it? And see what they say. But I think I think everybody needs somebody at some point.
Yeah, no, definitely. So more details will be on the Open University website, I'm sure, or you've probably already seen them already, but do contact us if you need more information on that. So can I now ask the attendees to ask any questions just by going into the question box and just typing any questions that you have for final questions for Keith. Fiona, I'm not able to see that, so I might ask you to take over or tell us if there are any questions there. Fiona's helping me this evening, Keith, as you know.
I'm desperately trying to unmute my mic then. Yeah, that's no problem. I'll keep an eye on them as they come through.
Okay. Okay. Well, I've got a few more questions as well for you, Keith. We talk. I'm getting down to the questions you didn't want me to ask. Yeah. We've talked about kind of things, kind of advice for people in the future. If they're wanting to set up a business, what about any kind of 3, I suppose, lessons you've learned in business, or maybe mistakes you've made, something you've really learned from in the past? Is there anything particularly that stands out?
Well, there's obviously 5 because I've been made redundant 5 times. So.
And you've learned 5 things from that, have you?
Well, no, I don't know. I kept on making the same mistake again, I think. Oh dear. I think,
when you say made the same mistake, is that a joke, or genuinely you just went? Did you think you went to sometimes you went to the wrong company, or?
I think I was always too optimistic, and I tend to believe what people say to me, and I guess on each of those occasions. Probably not the first one because I'd worked at that company for about 7 years, but the subsequent ones, I didn't do enough due diligence into making sure that the companies had the finance that they said they did. I took on face value what people told me, and probably didn't dig deep enough. My optimism was probably, I got carried away with my optimism.
I think that's easily done, especially if you've been job searching for a while. You're like, great, I've got a job, but you haven't dug around and done your due diligence enough, because you're often so pleased to get to land a job. I
tell you the biggest mistake I made in working was when I was working in the software sector, and I was marketing manager for an accounting software company. And my dream at the time was to work for Microsoft. It was the one company I wanted to work for. And one of the guys at Microsoft actually headhunted me to work for another company, another software company, who then which was a Danish. I worked for about 3 different Danish companies. It was a Danish software company, and they then got taken over by their competitor in Denmark. And I just saw no future for it, so I didn't get on with the new heads and this sort of thing, so I left. And about 6 months later, they got bought by Microsoft. So if I'd have stayed there, I would have ended up working for Microsoft. But there we go. But I've always said at each stage in my life, I think probably one lesson: never regret what you've done. If you make a decision based upon what you know at that time, irrespective if it turns out to be the wrong decision, never regret it, because you've got to move forward. You've got to learn from it and move forward.
Yeah, and as Steve Jobs said, connect the dots going backwards. Sometimes things that seem awful at the time, you learn so much from it that it does help you in the future. But when you're in it, you think, I don't want this. But actually you learn a lot from it. It's a bit of a glib statement, but we are today the product of what we've experienced in our life. So absolutely. We've actually, I can see the questions. I don't know why I couldn't before, but I can now. We've had a really good question from Mark Douglas, which is, how does Keith manage his time on social media? And that's such a great question, because it just does sap your time. And so how do you find the time to do that? I think, I go to bed about 1:30 in the morning and get up at about 5:30 in the morning. Right. That's true, actually, although I do tend to nod off in the armchair of an evening sometimes. I think you've got to be very careful, because I've gone through periods of time where you can get drawn into things and you spend all day looking at this and you're waiting for the next email to come through and things like this. Another book that I would recommend is what's his name? Tim Ferriss, I think it is, the 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah. Fantastic book to give you tips on how to
economize your time, how to be more strict on your time. And I think, I tend to dip into lots of different things, but don't spend too much time on them. Think of your time, limit yourself time. I learnt when I was doing my MBA studies with the Open University to chunk things, to say, right, I'm going to do 15 minutes, then I'm going to reward myself with a cup of coffee, and then you extend it and extend it. And I think that's the key thing. I do a little bit as and when I can, using the spare time. I don't sit and watch television of an evening. I tend to sit with a laptop and communicate with people and do some blogging and what have you. So downtime, which would be wasted. I envy people that catch a train to work, because, there's an hour, 2 hours where you could be blogging, where you could be, connecting with people. So I think you've got to look at your time, and you've got to look at how you're working it, and just be cost effective. Look at assign a value to your time, and use it accordingly.
Which is kind of what you were saying about the outsourcing. When you're running your own businesses, what can I outsource? What is the thing that only I can do, and what else can somebody else do?
But I'll tell you what.
Sorry.
A big no-no, and what I hate, and I'm coming across more and more people like it. People that are on Twitter but pay somebody else to do their tweets for them.
Ooh, why do you not like that?
It's not them. How can you? Would you pay somebody else to go into the pub and have a conversation on your behalf?
Yeah.
You wouldn't. But it seems to be, people think that it's a way of tweeting on there and to communicate, but it's not. It takes away the personal element of social networking.
Yeah. And I would imagine that's why you've been successful in growing your list and your followers, because it's genuine, it's you, and people pick up on that, And you take the time to, I was talking to somebody who's a specialist in social media, and she has a lot of followers, and she said, I take the time to, when somebody follows me, to go back to them and say, hey, thanks for following me, and just little things like that really help build those relationships. Julianne had a question. Could you repeat the book title?
I didn't really see that.
Could you repeat thanks, Fiona. Could you repeat the book title on time management again, please? I think that was Tim Ferriss of the 4-Hour Working Week, wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
I'll type that in, Julianne, into the box for you. Actually, that is around outsourcing and streamlining your life, really, isn't it, Keith? That book.
Oh yes, and it's well, it's something. I've not achieved it, but I'd love to.
Yeah, he does a very good blog, actually, Tim Ferriss, as well, and has lots of ideas on setting up businesses, which take very little time. It all takes work, and it's not easy, but he has some very good ideas. There's another. Sorry, Keith.
Well, I was just going to say, he also is very much about do what you love doing. Do what you're passionate about. Don't spend time doing things that you don't want to do. Get somebody else to do that, and focus on what you're really passionate about and what you really, really want to do.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. Well, that's it for this evening. This is great because it will make a good podcast for people wanting to download this. So we will convert it somehow into an MP3 file, and we're now going to have a little coffee break, and at 7 o'clock we'll be talking to Jamie Campbell, who's the owner and commercial director for D3T Limited, which he set up. So we'll see you shortly, but in the meantime, Keith, thanks so much for talking to us tonight. I found it really interesting and very inspiring to speak to you, so thank you very much on behalf of Open University.
Thank you very much too. It's been great fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.